welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be diving into the new palette from Wayne Goss. This is absolutely beautiful. I personally love a color story like this, so I was very excited when I saw all of the promo pictures. Beautylish and Wayne Goss was kind enough to send this to me and PR, along with the two new kohl pencils, the new shades that he's launching with this new palette. This palette will launch on September 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I will leave a link in the description box down below to be notified when this palette becomes available. This palette is called Tourmaline. Wayne describes this palette as being inspired by old Hollywood glamour, which I agree. These are definitely shades that remind me of old Hollywood. So I understand the vision behind it. All of his other palettes retail for $55. So I'm assuming that this palette will also be $55. I'm not for sure on that, but I'm assuming it will be the same price as the other palettes that he has in his collection. So in the video, I create 3 eyeshadow looks using the palette and the 2 new eye kohl pencils. Then we'll go ahead and get into the swatches, and I will swatch it next to a bunch of other palettes that I have in my collection that are similar in color story. Then once we get through the swatches and comparisons, I will go ahead and get into my final thoughts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into the tutorials, and I will see you guys all in my final thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the first tutorial using this palette. I have kind of stuck my fingers down in here, kind of playing around with it, kind of getting a feel for the textures, and also seeing what the colors truly are when you swatch them versus how they look in the pan. And right off the bat, I noticed that this shade over here in the corner is not as opaque. This is like his celestial shade. It's not as shimmery as his others. So it's a very, very thin texture. And I have to admit, I'm kind of bummed about that because that's kind of my favorite texture from him, just as far as all of the palettes that I have from him. For example, this one right here, if I swatch this one, it's got a lot more opacity to it. And it's just got this gorgeous shine. And if I swatch this one, which is his recent launch, this one has more opacity than this one in the middle as well. And then we go to the Imperial Topaz, this shade right here. I can feel the difference. When you swatch it, you can feel your finger picking it up. So this new one in this palette is just not as opaque. It just doesn't have that punch to it that the others do. Just an observation. I haven't used it yet, so, you know, we'll see how it applies with a brush or a dampened brush. All I have on is my foundation and my brows done. I didn't put any concealer on because I am going to be wiping off the looks to do the third and final look. So I'm going to first start with this shade right here. And I'm going to be using the BK Beauty in collaboration with Angie from Hot and Flashy. This is the A504. I'm just gonna grab that shade and place it here in the crease. And I'm gonna go into this shade right here, and I'm not gonna tap off the brush like I normally do, and I'm just gonna put that right here on the outer corner. And I'm now gonna go into this middle shade right here, and I'm gonna grab a Smith 253 brush. So I'm going to first put this on dry. So this is a dry brush. I'm going to place this right here on the lid. Okay, I'm going to grab the Mario E5 and I'm going to grab this shade one more time. And I'm just going to bring that here on the outer corner just to add a little bit of that depth, a little bit of definition. Let's use one of the eyeliners. So he's launched 2 new shades. There is Copper Flame and Tiger's Eye. Now, let me kind of give my thoughts on his kohl eye pencils. I actually really enjoy them for like detail work on the actual eyelid, where I go right next to the lash line and I can kind of wing it out. It works great because it's a little bit softer of a formula and you can kind of move it. You can take a smudge brush and kind of smudge it out because it's a little bit softer, so it smudges perfectly. However, on the flip side of that, this is not a pencil I would recommend in the waterline. It seems like for me, in my experience with eyeliners, if they're easy to smudge, they're not for tight lining. They're not for the waterline. If they're hard to smudge, then they're perfect for the waterline. That's been my experience. So we have Tiger's Eye right here and Copper Flame. Yeah, we have Tiger's Eye and Copper Flame. These are very pretty. So I'm gonna use this shade, which is Tiger's Eye. I'm gonna bring that right here against the outer corner right here, just to kind of build up some depth. And then I'm gonna take my BK Beauty 204 and kind of smudge that out. Now I'm gonna use my lower lash line as the guide because I'm gonna create just a tiny bit of wing. So I'm gonna go right here at the lower lash line and blink. And then as I blink, it kind of gives me the place where I want to put a tiny wing. Now, you know me, I'm not big adventurous on wings. I can't do strong wings, but I like to have just a little bit of something to kind of pull the eye out a little bit. For the lower lash line, I'm going to grab the Wayne Goss number 7 brush. This has been one of my favorites to do the lower lash line with. And I'm going to go straight into this shade. I want this shade only on the lower lash line. Put that on right there under there and kind of blow that out. What a pretty shade. Let's go ahead and see what we can get with this. I'm just kind of curious. So I've wiped my brush off. This is the Smith 253 and it's not dampened. I'm gonna go into this shade right here. I'm gonna put it right here on the center of the lid. So you get a little bit of something, but it's just not what we normally get from his celestial shades. So let's go ahead and see what it'll do if I dampen it. And I'm just gonna spray some MAC Fix on it and see if we can get it to be a little bit more sparkly. Yeah, I don't know that that's gonna make much of a difference. I mean, it does, it helps a little bit. Okay, so I went ahead and just threw on a lash. I didn't put any mascara on because I am going to be taking this off, and the more mascara I load on there, the harder it is to get off for the third look. So we're going to leave it here, but this is really pretty. I mean, if I went ahead and put the rest of my makeup on and, you know, put some concealer on and kind of brightened up this area, it would really brighten up the look. These shades are very beautiful, complement the eye, and this is like daytime. You could deepen it up and make it a little bit more nighttime, and it's just overall a very, very pretty look. It is, and very easy to create. So I'm happy with look number 1. Let's go ahead and jump into look number 2. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into look number 2. I actually want to go directly into the celestial shade and apply it on the lid because I want to see the true opacity. Putting it over top of a shadow is a little bit different than putting it directly on the eye. I use my Smith 253, which is my favorite brush. Because of the way that the bristles are made, it kind of really allows to pick up the product. And it's one of my favorites, especially for a topper shade like this. I'm also going to grab the flat definer from Sonia G. See if this being a little bit more flat will pick up. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the celestial shade right here. I'm going to place that right here on the lid. Yeah, it doesn't have near the opacity as the others. I mean, that's just kind of apparent. Let's try the flat definer from Sonia G. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Let's go back to the Smith 253 brush and let's spray it down just a little bit. Okay, so you really have to work with this shade. This shade is not quite as workable as his other shades in his other palettes. I am going to go back to this shade right here, and I'm going to apply this right here in the crease. I am going to go ahead and bring that same shade on the lower lash line using the Wayne Goss number 7. This shade is really pretty, and it's actually really pretty on its own. You can take it a long way and just use it as the main shade and use the other shades to kind of give it some life. But this is a really pretty shade, and it builds depth really easily. Now I'm going to grab this shade right here in the middle, and I'm going to go right over top of that dark color and kind of bring some shimmer to the eyelid and the crease. And I'm also going to bring that on the lower lash line as well. Now I'm going to go back to my Smith 253 brush, and I'm going to grab this shade right here. I'm going to place that right here on the lid, like right in the center. That is a very beautiful shade. I am going to grab the kohl eyeliner pencil in the shade Copper Flame. These pencils glide on so easily, and they give you such instant pigment. Okay, so I went ahead and threw on the other lash, and this is the final look for look number 2. These looks do look very similar, and I did use this shade for both eyeshadow looks, and of course I used this shade as a topper a little bit here in the center, and that's more on the inner corner on this eye, but these two shades are very similar, because they're both on my lid, and yes, this one's a little bit more pink and this one's a little bit more beige, but if I went out and about, I don't think anybody would notice the difference between these two eyeshadow looks on the lid. So I do kind of wish there was something different up here, because they are so similar, but they're so similar that I think they're a little bit too similar for 6 shades in the palette. Overall, both of these eyeshadow looks are very beautiful, and I love the soft shimmer on the crease. It, in my opinion, is the standout of this palette. The way that the shimmer blends into the crease without emphasizing any texture, any wrinkles, or anything like that, that in my opinion is just amazing. So that's it for look number 2. Let's go ahead and jump into look number 3, which will be the final look. Here, we're gonna move on to the third and final look, and I am dying to do a maroon halo eye. Like, I am dying to use this, just so excited. I'm gonna use this as the main color for the look. So I'm gonna grab the Rephr number 2 brush. I am just gonna start kind of building this here on the outer corner. It's really pigmented. Now I'm gonna go back to the BK Beauty A504. And I'm going to pick up that shade, and I'm going to slowly start kind of bringing that up and into the crease. But I'm kind of keeping my brush down here so that I don't go out too far. I'm going to grab the BK Beauty A501 and just kind of buff out those edges. I'm gonna leave that there for now, and I'm gonna grab the Smith 253, and I'm gonna grab this shade right here. I'm gonna place it right here in the center of the lid. gonna grab my smudge brush. This is the BK Beauty 204. And I'm gonna mix between these two shades right here. And I'm gonna kind of just deepen this up right out here on this outer corner. But just kind of taking like small like stippling motions to kind of create the depth and shade. Same thing on the inner corner, mixing those two shades. And the reason why I'm mixing them is because I don't want to go directly into that dark purple on the top because I don't want it to turn too dark. But I want the dark kind of around that pink to really make the pink pop, but I just don't want it to get too dark. And I'm also going to bring it a little bit right there into the inner center of the lid. One final step, I'm gonna grab this shade right here. I am gonna place it right here, just to add that little bit of extra sparkle over top of that pink. I'm gonna go ahead and throw some concealer on and I will be right back. So I went ahead and added some concealer. I'm gonna move on to the lower lash line. So I'm gonna grab that Rephr number 2 brush. I'm gonna go directly into this shade right here. And I'm just gonna smoke that into the lower lash line. Now I'm gonna grab my Sigma E15 and I'm gonna go into this shade right here. And I'm gonna focus that right here on the lash line. And I'm also going to do that on the inner corner and also on the inner corner on the upper. So I'm going to bring it right here. I want to bring a little bit of this pink right here up on the brow bone. I'm not going to do an inner corner highlight because lately when I do a halo eye, I don't really like to do an inner corner highlight. So I want to highlight the brow bone and kind of give it some shine. I'm gonna grab the Tiger's Eye, which is the eyeliner, and I'm just gonna deepen this up right here. And also right here at the base. Okay, so I'm back. This is the final look, and I really struggled with finding a lippy that would really give this eyeshadow look the pop that it needed, and Lisa Eldridge lipstick came to the rescue. I found the shade Velvet Decade. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it could be Decade or Decade. I'm not exactly sure what the pronunciation is on it, but this is a beautiful velvet matte and it was like perfect. It has those plum colors with that undertone of maroon and the depth that the lip needed, and it just turned out beautiful. So I am very happy with the overall look and lots to say about this palette. But for now, this is the final look for look number 3. We're gonna go ahead and jump into the swatches. I'm gonna swatch this palette next to a bunch of other palettes that I have in my collection. And then of course, I will jump into my final thoughts. So I will see you guys then. Okay, so now that we've made it through those swatches and comparisons, I do hope that those swatches were helpful for you. Let's go ahead and jump straight into my thoughts about this palette. First of all, I do really love the colors in here. This color story is something that I do wear a lot during the fall and winter time. Not so much during the spring and summer, but definitely fall and winter. So this is a very beautiful array of colors. I do really love the color story. However, I kind of wish that he went something different with these two shades. I mean, this is a very beautiful kind of light shimmering pink. It's not a super strong shimmer as you saw in the swatches, but I feel like the colors are so similar that I don't know that we needed both of those shades in this palette because it looks beautiful to look at, but when you swatch them and you apply them, they look very similar. As you could see, with the first and second look, they looked so similar you wouldn't have known that I was wearing two different shades on the lid. And even though I was wearing the gold shade on top, these are just too similar in my opinion in a palette with 6 shades. Somebody that has a lighter complexion, you'll probably be able to see the differences between these two shades, but on my skin tone, they're both very, very similar. The other issue that I have is this shade right here. I love his celestial shadows. They are so beautiful. And this was kind of disappointing because it's just not got a lot of opacity to it. Now, that's just me. There are a lot of people out there that don't want a lot of opacity from a sparkly shade like this. I think because I've become kind of accustomed to having his celestial shades being so beautiful and so eye-catching in a way on the eye from his other palettes, that was definitely a disappointment. I don't feel like it's the same formula as the others. I don't know if that was on purpose or if it was a flaw in the creation. I'm not sure. Even like the other palettes, for example, this beautiful turquoise right here, it's got some chunk to it and it's got some opacity to it and you can feel it. And even though I've swatched it a lot of times because I use these palettes for swatching and comparing and stuff like that. And a lot of people use their finger to apply these. This one has a lot of opacity. I mean, it could be because of the color. I understand it does have a color to it, so it's got a base to it to give it the opacity to shine. But even the Imperial Topaz, this one is a lighter shade and also very similar in shade when it comes to the color in this new one. This one still has the opacity. I mean, it is a jaw dropper. I mean, you guys, that is wow, it's beautiful. So with this one, I mean, I'm gonna wipe off my finger. It just doesn't have it. I can't pick it up. And now it's kind of become hard panned in a way. So I don't know exactly what happened. Oftentimes I will grab this palette just for this shade because it's got such a beautiful texture to it. So what I'm gonna do is so I've swatched it here on my middle finger, the one from the Imperial Topaz. I'm gonna swatch this one. I just can't get it to pick up. I'm gonna zoom in really close and I want you guys to see the difference in texture. So this is from the Imperial Topaz. This one is from the new one. You can see right away that it just doesn't have the chunk and it doesn't have the same pickup as the Imperial Topaz. So I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if it's a manufacturer or maybe he did this on purpose to accommodate for those that don't want this super sparkly shine. Because one thing we do know about Wayne Goss is that he listens to his audience. For example, when he first launched this palette, this was his first, he stated that he was going to have a black shade in every palette. Well, he got a lot of comments of people saying we don't need a black in every palette, especially with a palette, you know, with 6 shades. After the Pearl Moonstone, this was the last palette that he put black in. And after that, he has not put any black in his palettes. So Wayne does listen to his audience. This one is the recent one he just launched. This is the Pearl, and this one even picks up beautifully. I mean, look at that. This pearl is gorgeous. Up here on the screen is an image of that shadow in the Tourmaline palette compared to all of the other palettes that we have from Wayne Goss. You can definitely tell that there is a difference in opacity and there's a difference in shine. If you're somebody that has bought Wayne Goss's palettes and you love the texture of his celestial shadows, just keep in mind that this new one, it could just be my palette. Again, I don't know. I haven't watched any reviews on it. I haven't watched any other videos on it. I did watch his video on it and he didn't mention that there was a difference between this one and the others, but I just want to let you know what I'm seeing based on using it, playing with it, and swatching it next to the other palettes. I think it's important. Because also, his satin mattes, like this shadow right here and this shadow right here, they are absolutely beautiful in the way that they blend on the crease. There's very few shadows out on the market that you can put into the crease that have a shine to it and have a shimmer that will emphasize wrinkles and textures. Wayne Goss has perfected, in my opinion, he's perfected that formula where these type of sheens that they act as a matte and they build like a matte, but they have a shine to them, but not so much of a shine that they emphasize texture, but enough shine to give that crease something beautiful where it's not dusty and kind of like a traditional matte would make it look a little bit dry and a little bit dusty. These type of shadows don't do that. I do really love his satin textures, and this palette is filled with it because we only got the one matte right here. All four of these shadows right here are all of that like satin shimmery matte. It's kind of like you spin all of those together and then you create something like this. Those are my overall thoughts. Sound off down below in the comment section. Let us know your thoughts on this new palette from Wayne. Let's just have a conversation. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and I will see you all in my next video. Love you. Bye.